And welcome to our Wednesday hay baling weather and ag in focus because I think there's a lot of that going on. Weather's dried up just a little bit, and we have the opportunity for folks to get out in the field. Or maybe I'm just saying that because I'm not home and it's better where I'm at. I'm Bridgette Readel, Ag Director, and I'm joined today by Justin from the Lakes, who's actually in studio. So, what's happening at home?
Afternoon, everyone. What's happening out there? It's funny you bring up hay baling because I saw a lot of that happening the past few days. I do a lot of bike riding and through the fields area, and yeah, there's quite a few farmers out there.
So it's hay season, and everybody has wanted some dry stretches of weather so that they could get out in the field, cut that hay, let the alfalfa dry out, and then get it all baled up. And I see sunshine behind you on the Lighthouse Commodities live stream, so that tells me that it might not be too terrible right there in Fargo at the moment.
It was actually raining when I got here. It's been kind of on and off. The clouds look pretty dark around here. So a little bit of rain today. It's obviously cooler. Just cracking 70 when I got here. Looks like it's gonna be up to 73 in Fargo here today, and then the rest of the week looks like upper 70s. Got some rain coming in for the Friday and Saturday, but just a 40-30% chance on those days. And then we pop back up into the 80s and 90s. It'll be 90 by Sunday. So I'm sure the farmers will like that. I know like the hay that I saw being baled, it looked like pretty good crop, to be honest with you, but I'm sure the higher temperatures everybody would like right now to get things to pop.
Whoa,
except Addison.
whoa! Forget the farmers.
Addison,
Won't anyone
you're in
think
an
about
air-conditioned
Addison?
room.
90
Who
degrees.
cares?
Are you trying to kill me?
Addison's not completely wrong. I mean, I know we need to have dry, warm weather for what's going on in the field right now, but I'm sort of like, I'm in Billings, Montana, you guys. I'm sitting where the sun's shining in on me. It's sort of hot. It's like 81 degrees here. It feels much warmer, but that's just me. So I'm with you, Addison.
And for those who can't tell, she's actually in her vehicle right now. If you're watching on Acres TV, Facebook, or the YouTube channel, and did you just crack open a beer? Is that what I heard?
Shut up. That was you, and I see that Mountain Dew in your hands. Good
It's
grief.
actually a LaCroix, but okay.
Did you bring enough to share with the class?
No, I did not. I did not.
Good. Because I went to Jake's Steakhouse last night, and I didn't bring enough to share with the class either. So,
Shame on you both.
Jake's Steakhouse. Was it
It was a
good?
great time. Yeah.
Phenomenal out there.
It's excellent. I am out here doing some media training with a couple of different commodity groups and really enjoying it. It's so much fun to hang out with folks in different areas and hear what's going on in their part of the world. But coming back to our part of the world, okay, so Justin and I knew that we were going to be on air today, and we talked about some of the things we were going to highlight. And then I'm going to go completely off script because of something I read this morning. Yesterday near Minot, there, in fact, at South Prairie, there was a grain bin entrapment for a gentleman in a bin of wheat, got buried up to his shoulders. Now, he was safely extracted from that grain bin entrapment. But I got to say, I don't think we mentioned farm safety enough. Some of you are like, I know what I'm doing. I'm careful out there. Okay, I get that. But especially if you have people who are coming from, let's say they're out of town and they're coming from part of the summer, make sure you go through safety with them. And for those of you who are on the farm regularly, let's not be getting in and out of the grain bins where we can have problems. I don't know if you guys read that story, but I just hate to see that kind of thing happening.
Yeah, amen. I did not hear about that one, but you hear about those grain bin ones all the time, and it's like, ugh. It's like that's got to be like the worst. I mean, I'm not that claustrophobic, but that would be a little much. I know that the part of the safety measures they do typically is they strap themselves in, don't they, at the top usually, or wherever they come in.
I think most of the time folks try to be pretty conscientious, right? And they're going to try to make sure that they have a harness, etc., especially in a commercial grain situation. But when you are in, your bin on the farm, that might not always be the case. So get your Google fingers ready. If you haven't gone to look for the grain weevil yet, which is developed by some farmers out of Nebraska, that actually looks like a little Roomba that can go in your grain bins. What it does is it breaks up the crust. So like if you're walking in a bin and you fall through, that's when you can be entrapped. Or if you're below and you've cleaned everything out at the floor level and you're trying to knock down grain that's hanging up in the top of the bin on the sides and it covers you, that's another entrapment. Well, if you use the grain weevil, it will level the grain as you are filling the bins, And then also you can send it in there instead of you to knock down problems in the bin. So I just saw Chad Johnson here in the Fargo area during Ag Tech Week a couple weeks ago, and it's out, it's ready to go. Oh, Addison's got it up because it's
Yep.
one of our favorite things to talk about.
I
Yeah,
love
it's
little
very
farm robots. They bring me joy. We've had a
it's
couple from all a bunch of sorts of different companies, all these robots that do all sorts of things. I just want like one. I just want like one farmer. All these companies are just like, let's just see what happens if they all like go like together at once. How automated can a farm get?
uh, well, there's one way to look at it. How automated can it get? And for those who want to be watching what Addison's showing us with the grain weevil, you can be doing that on our live stream brought to us by Lighthouse Commodities. Again, you can see that on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Acres TV, and we thank you for being a part of it. If you have questions today, you can reach us on the JLA Insurance phone line. That number is 701 293 9000. And Nate Thorsrud, he's a farmer too. He can help you there at the JLA Crop Insurance office, and you can reach him at 701 371 0311. So much to talk about today. We've got headlines. We have Wednesday weather trivia. Justin was in charge of trivia today. Do you think it's difficult, or is this like a beginner's level?
I don't know. Like this one could be like a gotcha one today. Actually, I think people assume one thing, and it's. I don't want to give it away, but it might be an easier.
Okay.
It's hard to tell. I can't tell.
All right.
It's
Well,
not.
we got
I wouldn't
that.
say it's super hard.
Then we also are going to be visiting with Jason Hansen. He's with Rock and Roll Agronomy up near Devil's Lake because there is an upcoming conference for the Ag Mafia, and that will be held this December. We're going to talk about that as well as a podcast that he's a part of called the Agronomist Happy Hour Podcast. And then a listener question. So I had a listener reach out who talked about the fact that he has a parent, a dad, who has been a longtime part of the farming operation, right? This gentleman took over the farm from his dad, and it's now approaching the point where dad is in his 80s. And there's some great concern about dad driving equipment. And son asked, how do we have that conversation with my dad? How do we talk about him not being in the equipment? And so I posted that question to social media. I have a ton of answers. Justin, I think you've done some homework on this as well, because it doesn't just talk about combines and trucks. You know, it can be any time that we've got to get a parent out of a vehicle when they're on the road, right? It's about safety's sake. So I bet we have a lot of great things to share when we get to that 1:30 segment.
Yep, I would agree. And yeah, I was looking at some of the stats on it too. And I mean, it's no secret to this audience, right? The average age even of a farmer. And then I was looking even at outside of the average age being in the, I think, upper 50s, that, 1 in 3 are over 65. So it's definitely a hot topic.
Oh, yeah. It is. And it's not just about driving safety with the equipment. It also can be part of that safety when it comes to others on the road, right? Or what are they even trying to get in and out of the equipment can be a big deal. So we're going to definitely be talking about that today. I think that'll be a great conversation piece. But got to save a little time so we can get into our Wednesday weather trivia because I know that's going to be a big deal today. I'm looking forward to it. And that's brought to us by Darter Plastics. Darter Plastics makes sure that we have the Darter Plastic bait ups. They are your own personal bait station. You don't have to stick your hand in the minnow bucket anymore. You can just use this. It kind of looks like a big gulp from what we used to get in college at the mini marts. And now you can take off an end. You can use the little scoop inside, and you can pull up your minnows much more easily. When it comes to some headlines, we've been talking just briefly about haying season. We got to be getting out there and getting a little bit of work done in the field. You know, hay balers have come a long way. We can do so much more with them than we ever could in the past. One of those things to keep in mind is that with your balers, it's not just about the preventative maintenance on your wear parts when you're getting ready to go to the field. You know, you can be dialing in some pretty perfect bale settings and just review those key settings when it comes to your bale size, your density. You have moisture sensors on balers now, so that can tell you if you need to stop or if it's the right conditions to be baling, because those conditions vary so much. And if you bale wet hay, you have the opportunity for fires. And I say opportunity, but I don't really mean opportunity. It's more of a disaster. But yeah, you can have fires and things that happen later on. And also, those balers keep track of your bale count, the moisture levels, the weights. So if you're selling hay, it's going to be so much easier to use. So just a little idea of what's happening in baler technology to date. So there's going to be lots more. And Justin's going to get in on the conversation with me, as well as Jason Hansen with Rock and Roll Agronomy, when we return from the Livestock Market Update with the American Ag Network. Thanks for joining us on Weather and Ag in Focus here on WDAY Radio. We are joined in this segment by Jason Hansen. He is a rock and roll agronomy up near Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and he's also part of the Ag Mafia. So Okay, Jason, first of all, I saw you earlier this morning on a four-wheeler. Has it warmed up more than 55 degrees than it was earlier today?
You caught me on the worst part of the day. It was drizzling and wet, but it didn't show up on the radar. But it was there, overcast. We're just cloudy now and windy, so it feels better because I'm not soaking wet.
So, Jason, you thank you very much for taking time out of your day for joining myself and Justin from the Lakes, my guest co-host today. And so to Jason Hansen with Rock and Roll Agronomy, if it's cold and windy and wet, I bet you're looking forward to later this year. Maybe there's a agronomy conference coming up that you might want to talk about.
Funny you should bring that up, Bridgette. Yes, absolutely. Uh, we the Ag Mafia puts on a conference, and we try to do it a little differently, I think, than most folks. In that we tackle some subjects that, for the most part, are somewhat controversial, or we try to have it so it's how would you say, non-biased, just kind of like you have a topic and you get someone that's really good on that topic and you go in and you discuss that. So Andrew Thorstensen last year did an excellent job describing delta T, which is a huge issue. In fact, I've got a text right here sitting in front of me, Bridgette, and it's so the big question: does a guy spray first round post application on pinto beans and also Liberty on soybeans the next couple days before we get a bunch of cloudy and rainy weather? Boom, that's the topic. There's the delta T right there, and I had a subject that was forensic agronomy and complaints, and that'll pertain this year as well. Unfortunately,
Because you get calls and people say, I want to know what happened in this field. And you are the expert. You're kind of like agronomy CSI. And people have you go out there to distinguish what's been going on. You take the time in this conference to help others understand how to do that or how to prepare to avoid those types of situations.
right, or things that are going to be moving up, into our area as a prerequisite. Like last year, we had a lot of talk about tar spot in corn. We had Nicole Steckline from Iowa come up. So we go find the people that we know are good speakers. They know their material, and it's like, well, if we have to deal with this, this is a great venue to come and listen to someone firsthand who's dealing with it, and all the other issues, if it's corn rootworm or things like that. So yeah, I think I know we had a good conference last year because our feedback was phenomenal.
This is also a conference of, this is not 200 people. This is more like 50 or 60 people because it needs to be interactive. We want people to be able to visit and talk. And yes, I am a part of the Ag Mafia. I am there too. This conference will be December 8th and 9th here in Fargo. And we're currently in the planning stages of who are going to be the people that we listen to that we want to have come in and talk agronomics or just agriculture in general. Any that you think you want to highlight, or are we a little too soon to share any of those?
Oh no, you got to have a teaser out there, right? I think. We've got a couple. I know we got a couple people that spoke last year they're so excited. They had such a good experience as a speaker that they want to come back, and they're already prepped some of their twists and different ideas that they want to have on there. I know one topic that we're going to dive into will be, where does AI, artificial intelligence, fit into this whole agronomy picture, and are you using it? Are you not using it? Talk to people who are using it extensively and get their feedback, because it can be a very powerful tool, not a crutch, but a tool. So, and probably one of the more controversial topics that we'll bring up and talk about will be pre-harvest glyphosate on wheat, and tackling some of the public's opinion on that, and from an agriculture standpoint too.
Yes, good, bad, and otherwise. And frankly, this is not just for agronomists. This is for folks who are professionals in the industry. Farmers, we had a lot of farmers who attended last year, and we really look forward to people keeping their eyes open for it. And which leads me to my second part of the conversation today. And so, Justin from the Lakes, are you a podcast kind of guy?
I am actually.
Well, have we got a podcast for you, Jason?
Yeah, it's we've had if anybody's listened to the Agronomist's Happy Hour podcast, um, it is essentially we talk about people in the agronomy field, agriculture related, not always strictly agronomy, but can be related to that, or of interesting just conversations. And we have a happy hour while we record, and it's totally off the cuff. We don't like to prep any guests ahead of time for the most part, both ways, so they don't know what we're going to ask, and it just goes. And it's always good. It does. Next thing you know, an hour and 10 minutes is by, and we're like, okay, that's a wrap. And they're like, that's it. That's all. That was the whole thing. I worried all this much, and it goes so smooth. And so Bridgette's the co-host with us, so it's real easy. She's just really good at questions and open-ended things that get conversations started. So I think
And
it's a good
it's
podcast, but I'm totally biased, of course.
okay, but it's not just in the field stuff. You had a guest on before I was able to step in and help with some co-hosting responsibilities. Godfrey Freed, who was in the milling industry, came on. And I loved this episode because he talked about why people want white bread because they love that look, but all that means that all the good stuff has to be milled out. So when everybody wants to talk about how gluten hurts my, gluten's bad, I'm gluten intolerant, but the problem is it's your perception of your eyes more than what you're eating that's causing the problems.
Yeah, Godfrey had a great podcast. We had a lot of positive feedback on it. He spent his whole career in the milling industry, other than probably the last 3-4 years where he's managing an ethanol facility, which probably could be another topic, Bridgette, with the DDGs aspect,
Yeah.
But just had great insight into what it takes to run a mill, where they know as a mill what type of wheat they're getting from what regions, parts of the United States, things that you probably don't think about too much. So just topics like that. We've had a couple people recently that have spent long careers in agriculture in the state of North Dakota. Dave Gertz, Kevin Thorsness, and those are very interesting conversations as well. So we just find people that are interesting and companies or people, and it's like, yeah, let's just sit down and talk.
And there's a lot going on in ag every single day. So Jason Hansen with Rock and Roll Agronomy, Ag Mafia. Thanks for stopping the four-wheeler for a little while today just to visit about the things that you do and that are coming up in ag, in agronomy, in the region that people want to pay attention to. Again, that's the Agronomist's Happy Hour podcast. And then there will be the Ag Mafia Winter Conference coming up in December. So, Jason, stay dry out there.
Will do. Thanks, Bridgette. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
All right, we are going to touch on the news. And when we return, Justin and I have a listener question we're going to tackle.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I am Justin from the Lakes. I am just co-hosting with Bridgette today. Bridgette Readel, she's on the road. That's 1:34, and thanks for sticking around with us today. We were wanting to talk elderly and farming, and when it's time to kind of have a conversation on, whether it's the farm equipment itself or the vehicles, and we thought, who better to talk about that than Bridgette? She's up there in age as well, and I'm just teasing.
Let's see. You tried to get me with the opening a beer, so to speak. Let's see where this is going today.
I'm just teasing, but no, you said a couple breaks ago that you had somebody had got a hold of you on Twitter and brought it up, and then you kind of put it out to the crowd. What did you find out?
Okay, so the question was, this is a gentleman who farms here in North Dakota. Dad's 84, and whether it's driving farm equipment or just a regular passenger vehicle, he said, I am now faced with this dilemma of having to tell my 84-year-old dad, you shouldn't be in the combine this year. And he doesn't want it. He knows how hard that is, and he's looking for some advice. What's the approach that we should take? And this is a great time for those who are listening if they want to call in, and they can do that on the JLA insurance phone line. That number 701-293-9000. Some of the things that people pointed out. First of all, you not sure what you should do, but probably what happens to you as the farmer, say nothing. You bottle it up, you get frustrated, you make passive aggressive comments, and you get more frustrated. It's the Midwestern way. That's said with some sarcasm, but there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't think it's just farm equipment, Justin. Have you had to deal with a parent where you've had to say driving is not in your best interest?
Sort of. So grandma, when she was alive, not a farmer, but she, fortunately, fortunately, I don't mean this the way it sounds, but she had a stroke, so it was pretty obvious at that point. She, she was still very alert and so forth. She didn't have like the typical numbness and all that kind of stuff that you get from strokes. However, there was times when, I remember she got in an accident one time, just a very light one. And I'm sure it was switching lanes from what she had said. And it was like, she just didn't see the person, not as quick on her reflexes and got in an accident. But I let it go as long as it didn't become a thing. I didn't want to have that conversation with her because she was, that's the thing I think people in the audience are hearing today too, is it's a balance, right? I mean, you have to balance out, you want your loved one to stay alive and stay active as long as possible, right? Because that activity is going to keep them alive. So, how do you handle this? And I don't know. I found a lot of points about things, as I mentioned earlier, about, everybody knows that the 1 in 3 farmers are 65 or older. But a lot of times, and I even read that in here too, is that they want to keep going as long as possible too, because it's for their mental and health benefits, and they realize that.
Yes. Yep. And one way to change things up, and this came from a livestock producer in New Mexico. He said it's a pretty tough bridge. And I remember when we had to tell my granddad he couldn't go out and help with our annual branding. That just about killed him. But in the same regard, we set up a chair so he could be on the sidelines and critique what we were doing.
That's right.
Several people said if you have a parent that's really active in the farm, but it's becoming a safety concern, perhaps that's the way, is finding something else for them to be able to do is, are you able to still drive the side-by-side? Can you be a parts runner back and forth to the shop? Maybe it's a downsizing of the equipment that you're in. I know that that's going to vary based on the situation each farm is a part of.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to go about it too, is, find some things that they really enjoy to do. Maybe they do enjoy to do the combining as an example, but if there's other things, find those things, try to, and I don't want to say bait them, but just, obviously have no questions about them doing those types of things, and pull back like you said, and hey, look, can I go out there in the combine with you? You can. Obviously there's multiple seats in them, as we know, or a jump seat or what have you, and they can still go along, still like, okay, this is how I would do it and so forth. But yeah, and they're still part of it, but you don't have to worry about the safety aspect as much.
One of the things that a producer down in South Dakota mentioned, he says, this has to be done with respect.
Oh, yeah.
I'm personally not looking forward to doing it with my dad. And I want my dad to know that I love him, but I hate that this is happening. And I'm really worried about his safety and those of us on our operation too.
Well, and it's funny. One of the points that I found on this too is that some of the fear with because I read lots of articles about farmers still being in their 80s and
Oh,
doing tons
yes.
of stuff with dairy and what have you. And one thing that it's many older farmers have no heirs. So they're already
Right.
worried about land loss and consolidation. That's already top of mind for them. And now you take this away, whatever that may be, whatever this is, and it just kind of drives that point home even more while they're alive.
It really does. It's it's also probably for some they have to recognize it themselves. There are things that as we age we can't all do like we once did. And maybe occasionally we have to be the one to also say, it's not in my best interest to be driving a loaded semi at my age in and out of the elevator, down busy state highways, etc. Um, another producer, he's in, excuse me, Southern Illinois. He said, we just kind of made Grandpa the gopher, sent him for parts, fuel, food, whatever it took. Um, he was still safe to drive a pickup at that point, but later on, then Grandpa did recognize I probably had to stop doing it. Um, those may recognize what's happened in their health, Parkinson's, mini strokes. Maybe that's a time when eyesight has changed for you again as the individual to say, this isn't necessarily safe for me to do it.
Looks like we have a
Big,
caller on the line. Do you want to
oh,
include
yeah, bring her.
Jacob here? Wants to get in on the conversation. Jacob, what do you have for us on Weather and Ag in Focus?
Hi. With this topic, my grandfather was probably in his early 80s, maybe about 80, 82. The first sign was that he kept complaining about his knees hurting, after sitting in the tractor for 4 or 5 hours. So at that point, he kind of admitted that he can't put in the full day work. And then a little later, when he was fueling up the tractor, he accidentally put diesel fuel in the hydraulic oil tank, and then that was kind of the final catalyst for him to say, okay, it's time for me to step away from maybe actually running the equipment here. So at that point he became perfectly content with just being the gopher, giving us rides, going into town for parts and that sort of thing. But eventually he got stricken with dementia, and then then it became a little tougher for us to tell him, you really can't be driving around on the township roads, checking on us, what we're doing, seeing what the neighbors are doing. So at that point, that's when the conversation became a little tougher for us to have that conversation.
Question for you, just out of curiosity on this, because I work a lot on mechanical things. So I always think of putting a mistake of putting unleaded in a diesel tank or something like that. That'll ruin an engine, right? What's it like on the hydraulic? Was that an expensive fix, or did you catch it quick enough?
No, he pretty much filled the hydraulic tank, so that tractor had to go to town to get the tanks cleaned out and the systems cleaned out before we could use it again.
But I think the moral...
So, Jacob...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, you go ahead, Justin.
Well, I think the moral of the story is, and that's kind of where we started off with this, is just the balance, right? I mean, it's still making them part of the operation, but maybe it's cherry picking things like this, and hopefully it happens naturally, like it did with you, Jacob. But that's kind of, I guess, my point. But
I think with Jacob, one of the listeners I had or followers I had on Twitter who also said, maybe asking Grandpa, how would you handle this? Maybe do you think this is a bad idea? And I don't know if it worked out for you to do that, because dementia is an awful situation to be in, but Grandpa eventually realized things had to change, and hopefully that went okay for you as a family.
Yeah, the dementia really kind of made things tough, because he, thought that he kept reverting back to how how things used to be done, and he couldn't quite, grasp what, the current situation is like. I know So the movie Silo deals more with like grain bin safety. I'm sure you're well aware of that, Bridget.
I
But
am well aware of
the
it.
biggest,
Yep.
but the biggest takeaway I had from the movie wasn't so much the actual safety or what happened inside the grain bin, but it's the farmer letting his dad, who was dealing with dementia, finally relenting and letting his dad make a decision, which then led to the series of events that happened in the movie. That's something that you really have to be careful with. When you have somebody in the operation that has, dementia, Alzheimer's, if they still want to be active, you really have to kind of be careful and really channel what they think they should be doing, and maybe distract them with, a simpler task like sorting bolts or something like that.
Well, one thing, just kind of thinking this through too, that I was, like I said, just came to me is that much like estate conversations, estate planning, wills, etc., to having these conversations early, essentially before like there's a dementia or Alzheimer's, right? How would you like us to handle this when dad or mom, when you get, to a certain age, what would you like to see, as much as input as you can get from them, and hopefully, they can recall that when the time comes, like, man, I just, probably not a good idea in your case, like with the knees hurting and the tractor, and, maybe you should take over doing this and I'll do something else, or I'll supervise, or what have you.
Yeah, right. That was kind of the situation we were in, because about the time he was doing that, I was in high school, so I was able to do more of those jobs. So it was kind of an easy transition for that. But
Jacob, I want to say thank you for sharing in this discussion today with some real firsthand knowledge, and especially because you play right in to a couple of points that followers on Twitter said. One of them was Grandpa was complaining that my kids weren't doing enough to help. He was having to do it all. That's when I told my kids, you get there and you get it done before Grandpa does. We had to get a jump on things so he would help transition through that more clearly,
yep,
and just
yep,
showing that the young guy could take it over. So, Jacob, thank you so much for calling in today. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you for taking my call.
And when it comes to that hydraulic situation, one guy pointed out, he says, a basic rule: if you can't service it, you can't run it. There's lots more to cover in this topic, and I don't think this will be the last day that we touch on it, but we don't want to skip the fact that it is Wednesday and there is Wednesday weather trivia. So when we return, Justin's going to test your knowledge.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. It is Wednesday weather trivia. So we are going to, and by the way, that's brought to us by Darter Plastics. No more bulky, leaky bait buckets or dunking your hand in that ice water for bait. You can even replenish the stale low oxygen water without the loss of the live bait. So are we still giving those away and not just brought to you by?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes,
I was
sir.
given the wrong
You
copy the last time, so you set me up, so I got to check. So anyway, so today's question, do we want to rattle it off right now? Okay. So is which state has the greatest which state has the highest average number of tornadoes in the union? So I'll give you a hint, folks. It is not the state that you would think. But which state?
It's not Manitoba.
It's not Manitoba. And it's funny. I will say this though. So it's the state currently that has the greatest number on average of tornadoes annually. But as Addison and I were talking during the break, Illinois, that's not the answer. That's this year. They actually have beat that. Now, again, this other state's the average, right? But this year, Illinois, thus far, they've had, as of the article I was reading in June, they had 147. Now they think it's closer to 200 as of today. But again, that's not the state. That's just one this year that's kind of hitting a little bit of a higher on the amount. But looks like we might. Do we have a caller? All right.
Oh.
Caller, what's your guess? Which state has the most amount of tornadoes on average?
We're trying Louisiana.
Nope. Good guess though. That's you're close. You're close, but good guess.
Is he close geographically or alphabetically?
I'll give you it is part of Tornado Alley.
Okay.
So
that helps us.
Yeah, so one thing too, just another. Well, I don't know if I should give another hint yet, or if we want to take a call. Yeah, we got another caller
ahead.
here. What's your guess on which state has the highest amount of tornadoes on average?
Texas.
There you go. So bonus question. So it's 139 on average, but the bonus question is there is a river that they most likely occur to, a river valley. What's the name of that river? And I'll give you another hint. It's a river that's very close to us. Any ideas?
Missouri River?
No, Red River. And most of them happen in the Red River Valley down there. Yeah, it's hilarious. I found that funny. But yeah, good. Hang out on the line here, Addison. We'll get you. What's your name, by the way?
Reed Jaworski.
Reed Jaworski. Yeah, good call. Good guess. Yeah, Texas. I would have thought, I was asking Addison this during the break. I would have thought Kansas, Oklahoma, but Texas is what it was.
I don't know if I'm terribly surprised. Texas has some pretty wicked weather.
They do, and I frequently, a fair amount go down to Dallas, and and you've been, I know, down for even south in San Antonio and so forth for different conferences. I mean, it's very humid, which, very humid, high on the dew point. So that really, gets things cracking on a warm day down there. But it always pretty well. And look, it was just a number of years ago, right? They had that big one that took out on the power for a long time. And people were out
communities.
Yeah, and people were going out buying at the time those Ford F-150s with the built-in generator had just came out, and those things were flying off the lot to power your house. Hilarious.
Well, okay, let's talk a little bit more about equipment now that Reed was our winner for today's Darter Plastic Bait Up. And when you think about ag equipment, and I heard you say earlier that you like working mechanically, working on equipment. John Deere, AGCO, and CNH, which for those of you who are Case fans, that's Case New Holland, they agree that 2026 seems to be the bottom of our current ag cycle as far as sales of equipment. Right? We're looking that executives anticipate a change in 2027, but that recovery is probably going to be slower and more conservative than what is in the past cycles. That replacement demand is going to drive the recovery as machine hours are starting to pile up because we have a lot of people holding over their machine much longer than they have before. The overall volume in this industry has dropped by 20% this year, and that's the lowest market level since the 1970s. Wow. That's a big change for farm equipment.
That is a big change.
And to all of those guys who sell farm equipment, man, I feel your pain. I understand right now that this is not your easiest time of life.
But one good news piece there, and it's something I brought up on the last show I hosted with you a couple weeks ago, and it's even gotten better, is the oil continues to drop and pretty fast. Even today, I was hoping it would fall below in the 60s today. It actually is 70.13 right now on the market. And, you know, oil's one thing, but okay, what's the price, Justin? Well, down the street, as I mentioned before, you know, compared to being here at the peak of it doing shows, it was like 520, right, for diesel, and now it's a full dollar plus down from that. So that's 20%. That's a big deal.
It's a really big deal, especially as we start to approach harvest and we have to start running combines and trucks and all of those things, because we do know that those input costs have not gotten any better as of late in other areas besides fuel costs. Interesting to note, I hear often that folks point out that we have dividends paid back to shareholders on companies like AGCO, John Deere, et cetera. And in prior downturns, the structural efficiencies were not as good as they have been now to make margins better. So yes, John Deere is reporting a 17% equipment operating margin, and AGCO's trough margins are double what they were in previous cycles, but they have made some very significant cuts in efficiency in order to make that happen. Does it feel good when you are trying to buy a new piece of equipment and it's incredibly expensive? No. But does it feel good if you're getting a dividend because you're a stockholder of a publicly traded company? Yes. So there's where the difference might lie.
Well, good stuff. Well, thanks for having me today. Appreciate it. Any other last words there, Bridgette?
I think it's been a great day. Thanks for joining me. Jay Thomas, he's coming up next.